when you realize that there are 2.9 billion ounces of silver traded on the LBMA every day, every day, which is 3.5 times annual global mine supply. When you realize that these bullion banks that are as stupid as a mud wall are short to the tune of 4 to 6 billion ounces that supposedly are available for delivery, those contracts that they sell on the LBMA over the counter market, which isn't an exchange where there's some entity that can come in and save the day. This is a one-to-one deal. And all the people who have the other side of that trade think that they can stand for delivery. Doesn't mean they will, but they could. And if they do, that means there's 4 to 6 billion ounces of silver that could actually stand. And the reason that it's not for sure how many there is that it's a much more opaque market. It's a one-to-one market instead of an exchange like the COMEX. And so it's a lot more less transparent, if you will, than the COMEX is. But all of these people could stand for delivery, and yet there's only 300 million ounces available that is not already accounted for at the LBMA. We don't even know how much of that is really for sale. What if everyone stands for delivery? And so when you talk about this scenario where we see continual deficits, we see massive naked shorting, and we see the smart entities in the global south draining the exchanges, where 8.1% of the float, the available 300 million ounces, was delivered in August. Where is it going to? Who's buying it?
Every day, 2.9 billion ounces of silver are traded on the LBMA, a staggering 3.5 times the annual global mine supply. Bullion banks are short by up to 6 billion ounces, promising delivery on silver they likely don't have. With only 300 million ounces truly available for delivery, the market is a powder keg waiting to explode. What happens if even a fraction of those contracts demand delivery? As Andy Schectman explains, countries like China and Russia are quietly draining the world's silver supply, positioning themselves for a major advantage while the West remains unaware of the looming crisis. This could be the biggest financial event of our time.
And so we are entering a period of time where it's accelerating, and the countries around the globe that are buying silver understand that. This is why I made such a big deal about China flying around Latin America buying unrefined silver in the form of bars and and concentrate, which is the byproduct sludge, and the unrefined silver bars, the doré bars that are crudely refined by the miners who then send it to the refiners. Well, China says, I'll just pay you double and take it right off your hand, and I'll ship it to China and refine it myself. Well, they're already the largest or second largest producer of silver in the world. And if I had to bet, they're probably the largest. They just don't tell us how much they mine. And so we are entering a period of time where I think price discovery will ultimately be forced upon the world through some form of a issue where a failed delivery on the LBMA, which could, catalyze a massive spike in the price of silver, or something like COMEX, which is a rules-based exchange where it's written into the rules that if in the interest of the exchange, we can basically say you can't get delivery. We're just going to cash settle you. Well, that's a default. So could that happen? Yeah, why not? We're seeing all of these things progress and accelerate. And we're seeing countries accelerate their acquisition of silver. We see Russia being the first nation to openly admit it will be part of their state fund and are dedicating money to accumulate not just gold, which the number that they talked about in gold, let me see if I have it. It's quite startling. I don't know if I have it, but they talked about Russian finance ministry has announced plans to exponentially increase its gold purchases, raising the daily acquisition from 1.12 billion rubles to 8.2 billion rubles for the next month. So, that's not just gold. They're doing it now with silver and with platinum and palladium, but they're making it part of a state-backed admission. Well, India, who's bought about 800 million ounces in the last 3 years, it's not openly discussed and admitted, but they have. You can see from the import-export numbers exactly what they're doing. That's more than is on the LBMA in total, of which 500 of those 800 million on the LBMA belongs to the ETFs. In terms of COMEX, I mean, that's way more So these countries are buying silver, they're accumulating it. We see a structural deficit year over year over year, 1.2 billion ounce shortfall over 6 years, omitting the military side of the equation, naked shorting to the point of 3.5 times global annual mine supply every single day. This will end badly. It will end very poorly, and it will be one of these deals where you'll wake up and say, "My God, what just happened with silver?" So yeah, I don't know when that happens, but I think you have to, have strong fingertips, and you have to trust your intuition and your gut and the mathematics of it. That ultimately this is a game that cannot continue to go on. And I think the commercial banks are trapped and scared, and they understand this. They understand that, like, if they try to cover on Comex, it just pushes up the price on the LBMA. Every dollar increase in the price of silver is a $4 to $6 billion loss on those banks' balance sheets. At what point do they continue to short so that more people say, okay, we'll stand for delivery at these stupid prices? And then when do we get that ultimate default, which then pushes the price to the moon as everyone tries to cover, or it just blows up the system? So ultimately, we probably progress towards a more realistic ratio between price and mine supply, or in the ground mining ratio. At this point, I look at it as probably the greatest value I've ever seen ever in my career, from a standpoint of what's called asymmetrical risk reward. What has the greatest upside and the lowest downside? It's silver. I mean, doesn't mean it's going to play out when we think it will or how we think it will, but ultimately and mathematically and logically, it just seems like a slam dunk. If, for those of you that are golfers, it seems like a 2 foot putt. Your buddies may not give it to you. If it's inside a foot, maybe that's a gimme. 2 foot putt, you'll make 9 out of 10 times, but it's as close to a sure thing as I've ever seen in my career. How it plays out, still yet to be determined, but I like the odds for sure. Look at the cup and handle in silver, man.
It's
The
huge.
40-year cup and handle in silver is unlike anything I've ever seen.
Yep.
I mean, look at the cup and handle formation in silver. If you pull up a chart, it's enormous, and it's about 40 years long, which means it's very mature. And for those people who don't know technical analysis, it's one of the most bullish technical indicators of all time. So you see the cup and handle formation in both gold and silver, maybe even stronger in silver. And again, the only reason these countries aren't bitching is because they're the ones buying it. They're the ones knowing they've got the West over a barrel. You do not need to send, cruise missiles into the U.S. to fight the U.S. to beat them. You just need to beat them at their own game in a lawful manner, and that stand for delivering all the world's commodities. And that's what they're doing. And they're beating us because of our own stupidity, which is suppressing a market that no one ever stood for delivery. They are now, and that's how you win a game that is transitioning from opaque debt promises to commodity-backed ecosystem, which we certainly are. It seems like so. That'll all change when there is a non-delivery event, or there is a cash settlement event, or something that triggers the rest of the world to understand that price discovery on the West is a joke. And you look, for example, look at the difference between Comex, which is rehypothecated 15, 16, 1700%, meaning 17 people all think they own the same, all have a contract and think they have claim to it. But if one person says, give it to me, and gets it, what happens to the other 16? Well, that's cash settled. But you look at the Shanghai Metals Exchange as an example. In order to trade a bar on the Shanghai Metals Exchange, you have to first buy a bar from one of the 6 or 7 pre-approved refineries, who will give you that bar, and then they laser inscribe a serial number on it that is associated with the contract, and that inspires confidence and credibility. We don't have anything like that on Comex. It's just completely, totally sold over and over and over and over and over again, because most of the people don't stand for delivery. So we'll cash settle if we're Bank of America or JP Morgan or whatever, and no one will ever know until people say, give it to me. And that's what happened to Bernie Madoff. Same thing. It's a Ponzi scheme until it's a business, until it is discovered as a Ponzi scheme. And me screaming, and others like me screaming about this, only does so good, because maybe the people who are standing for delivery understand it, but if really the people in this country understood it, it represents an opportunity of a generation to buy an asset that is being accumulated at levels people I don't think quite comprehend because it's being masked by the inability to get real price discovery by this rehypothecation and this naked shorting in London that is for a very long time obliterated price discovery and the real value found inherently in this stuff. It's not lost on India or China or Russia or Saudi Arabia or the other countries who are using it against us, but it really truly is, in my book, in my mind, an opportunity of a generation, one that you will not find very often. Look at the fundamentals: price, demand, supply, lack of supply, errors in reporting of supply, rehypothecation, massive naked shorting, all of this stuff, and accumulation by half the world using that against us. This is a rare opportunity. Either you take it or you think I'm talking my book.
Now that you understand the looming silver crisis and how major players like China and Russia are positioning themselves, you're going to need to dive deeper into what this means for the future of global markets. So don't miss the next important video from this channel, where we'll break down the next major shift you need to prepare for. Click here to stay ahead of the game.